a break-in that would shake the nation to its core. But what if I told you the entire Watergate scandal was almost never uncovered? It all started with one security guard's keen eye. The Watergate scandal began June 17, 1972, when 5 men were arrested for breaking into the DNC headquarters at the Watergate complex. The men were found with wiretapping equipment and large sums of cash, and they were attempting to photograph documents and install listening devices. Although the break-in initially seemed like a minor burglary, it soon became clear that it was part of a much larger conspiracy involving officials within the Nixon administration. In the months following the break-in, the Nixon administration, including President Nixon himself, attempted to cover up their involvement. The White House dismissed the break-in as a third-rate burglary, but investigative journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein of the Washington Post began uncovering connections between the burglars and top officials in Nixon's re-election campaign. One of the most significant revelations came from an anonymous source known as Deep Throat, later revealed to be FBI Associate Director Mark Felt. Deep Throat provided Woodward and Bernstein with crucial information that pointed to a widespread effort by the Nixon administration to sabotage political opponents and manipulate the upcoming 1972 presidential election. The scandal escalated when it was revealed that President Nixon had installed a secret recording system in the White House that taped his conversations with aides and other officials. These tapes provided direct evidence that Nixon and his top aides had discussed ways to obstruct the FBI's investigation into the Watergate break-in. In 1973, a Senate committee led by Senator Sam Ervin began televised hearings to investigate the Watergate scandal, which captivated the nation. During these hearings, former White House counsel John Dean testified that Nixon had been deeply involved in the cover-up, referring to it as a cancer on the presidency. The battle over the tapes became a legal and political crisis. Nixon initially refused to release the tapes, citing executive privilege, but the Supreme Court ruled in United States v. Nixon that he must turn them over. When the tapes were finally released, they contained a smoking gun conversation from June 23, 1972, in which Nixon discussed using the CIA to obstruct the FBI's investigation. This was seen as clear evidence of his involvement in the cover-up. Facing near certain impeachment by Congress, Nixon announced his resignation on August 8, 1974, becoming the first U.S. president to resign from office. Vice President General Ford was sworn in as president the next day and later issued a pardon to Nixon for any crimes he might have committed while in office, which remains controversial to this day. But the entire scandal may have never been exposed if not for the role of a single security guard. On the evening of June 17, 1972, security guard Frank Wills was on duty at the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. While making his rounds, he noticed that several doors leading to the offices in the building had been tampered with. Wills observed that the doors had pieces of tape placed over the latches, which prevented them from locking. He removed the tape, only to find that someone had retaped the doors a short time later. Realizing something was off, Wills called the Washington, D.C. police to report a possible burglary. The police arrived quickly, and plainclothes officers discovered and arrested 5 men inside the DNC headquarters. These men were later identified as operatives connected with President Nixon's re-election campaign. Frank Will's discovery of the break-in was the catalyst for the investigation that eventually exposed the widespread corruption and illegal activities within the Nixon administration. Frank Wills wasn't looking for trouble. He was just doing his job. But when he noticed the tape covering the latches on the doors, he knew something was wrong. His curiosity led to the arrest of the Watergate burglars and eventually exposed the biggest political scandal in American history.